My name's Jess. I've always been the kind who gets things done on her own. By the time I was 33, I was deep into my career, not even thinking about settling down, despite the occasional admirer. But, as they say, life happens when you're busy making other plans. It was a regular Wednesday evening, and I was about to head home from work when my car decided it had other ideas. There I was, stranded in the office parking lot, hood up, hands on my hips, cursing under my breath at the smoking engine. That's when Tom walked over. I noticed him a few times around the lot. He worked in another part of the building. Tall, with a kind of quiet confidence about him, he had that look that said he could handle just about anything. "Car trouble?" he asked, an eyebrow raised as he approached. "You could say that," I replied, trying not to show my frustration. "It just started making this awful noise, and then smoke everywhere." Tom chuckled, which normally would tick me off, but there was something genuine about it that kept me calm. "Mind if I take a look?" "Be my guest." I gestured towards the open hood. "I'm Jess, by the way." "Tom," he said, extending a grease-free hand, surprisingly. "Let's see what's going on with this old beast." He poked around for a minute, then straightened up, wiping his hands. "It's your alternator, I'd bet my last dollar on it. You're not going anywhere tonight unless you get it towed." "Great, just my luck." "Fantastic," I sighed. "Thanks for the diagnosis." Tom laughed again, pulling out his phone. "I've got a buddy who owns a shop not too far from here. Let me call him and see if he can help us out." While he talked on the phone, I couldn't help but notice how easy it was to just stand there with him. It wasn't like me to feel comfortable with a stranger so quickly. "All right, he can tow your car tonight, and he'll look at it first thing tomorrow. I can give you a lift home if you need," Tom offered after he hung up. I hesitated for a moment. Mom always said not to get in cars with strangers, but then again, I wasn't exactly a kid anymore. "Sure, that'd be great. Thanks, Tom." "No problem. Just trying to be helpful," he said with a smile. "Besides, it's not every day I get to rescue a damsel in distress." "Whoa there, cowboy." I shot back playfully, "I'm no damsel, and I'm not in distress. I just have a stubborn car." "Noted." Tom grinned as we walked to his car. Stubborn car, tough owner. The drive was short but filled with easy conversation. We talked about work, our favorite places to eat around town, and some of the crazy experiences we had at our jobs. It was refreshing to talk to someone so normal. When he dropped me off at my apartment, he handed me a business card. "In case you need a ride to the shop tomorrow, or if your car gives you more grief." I took the card, a small smile playing on my lips. "Thanks, Tom. Maybe I'll call you, and not just for car troubles." He winked as he drove off, leaving me there with a weird feeling in my stomach. Excitement? Maybe. For the first time in a long while, I was actually looking forward to what tomorrow might bring. After Tom and I met, things moved pretty fast in a good way. He was open right from the start, which I respected a lot. But as we got closer, he started to share more about his family dynamics, and it wasn't the pretty picture I was used to growing up with. Tom's older brother, Mike, had always been the golden boy in the eyes of their parents, especially their mom, Linda. According to Tom, Linda doted on Mike, always talking him up as the smartest and most successful. Mike got more attention, more praise, and yeah, more of everything else too. Tom seemed to have made his peace with being the second fiddle, but for someone like me, who came from a family where love and fairness were a big deal, it was hard to swallow. I remember telling Tom, "It's not right, you know. You're just as great as anyone, Mike included." Tom just shrugged, a little uncomfortable. "That's just how it is, Jess. I've dealt with it. Let's not make waves, okay?" The first time I met Linda, it was clear she wasn't thrilled about me. It wasn't anything she said outright, it was more the way she talked about Mike in front of us, barely acknowledging Tom's achievements. "Mike just got promoted again. Can you believe it? We're so proud," she'd gush, while Tom just nodded along. Despite all that, I still tried to make a connection, but it felt like hitting a brick wall. Eventually, I realized maybe Tom and I were better off without trying so hard to win them over. 2 years down the line, Tom and I decided to tie the knot. It wasn't a big affair, just something small, with a few close friends and family. Mike, surprisingly, was genuinely happy for us, which was more than I could say for Linda and her husband. They showed up, sure, but there wasn't much joy in their congratulations. At the reception, I caught Linda boasting to another relative about Mike's latest business venture, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I was mingling nearby with some of our friends when Tom caught my eye, a look of resignation on his face. I walked over to him, squeezing his hand. "Hey, let them talk about whatever. Today's about us, right?" I whispered. "Right," Tom nodded, giving me a small smile. "Thanks for putting up with all this, Jess." When Mike and his wife welcomed their first child, a boy, the entire family went all out. I mean, it was like a royal celebration. Linda threw a huge bash, balloons, cake, the works. Her social media was on fire with photos and posts about being the world's happiest grandma. The love and pride she poured into that event were obvious to anyone who saw it. A year later, Tom and I had our little Emily, and the contrast in Linda's reaction couldn't have been starker. There was no big party, no social media fanfare. Honestly, it stung more than I thought it would. When Linda called to congratulate us, her voice carried that formal tone reserved for acquaintances, not family. "Congratulations, Jess, Tom. A girl, that's nice," she'd said, her enthusiasm as flat as a pancake. "Thanks, Linda. We're really excited." I tried to keep my voice bright, but it was hard. "That's wonderful. Let me know when you have the baptism planned. I'll make sure to clear my schedule," she replied, and that was pretty much it. At Emily's baptism, the disparity became even more obvious. Linda came, of course, she's the grandma after all, but her whole demeanor was so offhand it might as well have been another Sunday service for her. While we were setting up the hall for the small gathering after the ceremony, I overheard Linda talking to one of her friends. "Oh, Mike's boy is just starting to walk. It's incredible how quickly he's picking it up. We think he'll be quite the athlete." Feeling a bit irked, I walked over to Tom, who was arranging chairs and didn't seem to notice his mother's gushing about his nephew. "Tom, doesn't it bother you? The way your mom is all over your nephew and just here for Emily?" Tom looked up, a slight frown creasing his brow. "Yeah, it does. But what can we do, Jess? It's how she is. Mike's always been the star. But Emily's your star, our star. Doesn't she deserve the same?" I pushed back, not ready to drop it. Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Of course, she does. And she'll always have us. I know it's not the same, but..." "But nothing," I cut in, my frustration peaking. "She should care more, Tom. It's not fair to Emily." "You think I don't know that? But confronting my mom, it's just going to make things worse. She won't change," he said, almost pleadingly. As the day went on, I tried to shake off the feeling of disappointment. I focused on our friends and the part of the family that was thrilled for us. Emily was a bundle of joy, oblivious to the adult tension swirling around her. Post-baptism, we had a little party back at our place. Linda stayed a bit, mostly keeping to herself or chatting with Tom's dad, who seemed to be trying to make up for his wife's lack of enthusiasm by being extra cheerful. As Linda was leaving, I decided to try one more time. "Linda, we missed seeing you with Emily today. She's getting so big already, isn't she?" Linda paused, her keys in hand, and actually looked at me for a moment. "Yes, she is. Time flies. Well, take care of her. And let me know if you need anything." Emily grew more curious and chatty as she hit her 3rd birthday. Kids, they notice more than you think, and it wasn't long before she started asking about her grandparents. "Mommy, why doesn't Grandma Linda come to see me like she sees Cousin Jack?" Emily's little voice was full of innocent confusion one evening while we were looking at family photos online. I paused, not sure how to explain family politics to a 3-year-old. Well, sweetie, Grandma Linda is very busy, and she lives a bit far away. But we see her on special days, right? It was a weak excuse, and even Emily seemed to sense it. But she sees Jack all the time. He has lots of pictures with her, Emily pointed out, her brow furrowing slightly. Tom, overhearing us from the dining room where he was fixing one of Emily's broken toys, came over and knelt beside her. Hey, Pumpkin, Grandma loves you a lot too. We all show our love in different ways, okay? Emily looked at him, then at me, and nodded, though it was clear she didn't fully buy it. Okay, Daddy. The conversation didn't sit well with me. That night, after Emily went to bed, I brought it up with Tom. We were in the kitchen, me sipping my tea while he cleaned up. Tom, this isn't right. Emily's noticing the difference. How long before it starts affecting her? I said, my voice low but firm. Tom put down the dish he was drying and leaned against the counter. I know, Jess. It sucks. But what do you suggest we do? Confront my mom? At least let her know how we feel. It's not just about visits. It's the way she's being treated compared to Jack. It could hurt her, growing up feeling less loved. I argued, feeling my frustration rise. Tom sighed heavily. I'll talk to her. I'm not expecting miracles, but maybe if she realizes it's affecting Emily. Thank you, I said, feeling a mix of relief and dread. A few days later, Tom and I decided to visit Linda without Emily. We arrived at her house, and after some initial small talk, Tom steered the conversation to what was on our minds. Mom, we need to talk about something important, Tom began, his tone more serious than usual. Linda looked between us, her expression cautious. What's wrong? Is it Emily? It's about Emily, and you, Tom continued. She's been asking why you don't visit her like you do Jack. It's starting to affect her. Linda stiffened, her face tightening. I see all my grandchildren when I can. You know how busy I am. But Mom, it's not just about time. It's about how differently you treat them. Emily feels it. We feel it, I added, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. Linda's eyes flashed. Are you accusing me of favoring my grandchildren? Not accusing, Mom. It's just what's happening. We're worried about Emily, Tom explained, his voice steady. Linda sighed, looking away for a moment before meeting our eyes again. I'll try to do better, but I don't like being told how to be a grandmother. We're not telling you how to be a grandmother. We just want Emily to feel as loved as Jack, I said, hoping she'd understand the difference. Linda nodded slowly, her posture relaxing slightly. I'll make more of an effort. That's all I can promise. That night, as I checked on Emily, asleep and peaceful in her bed, I felt a renewed sense of protectiveness. Whatever Linda's response would be, Tom and I were determined to make sure Emily grew up knowing she was loved and valued, no less than anyone else in the family. Emily's 7th birthday was coming up, and she was all excited about her party. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, and Emily was buzzing around in her favorite princess costume. Guests started arriving, and the kids were having a blast. I kept an eye on the door, waiting for Linda and George. They finally showed up, about half an hour late. Linda had a small, somewhat dusty-looking gift bag in her hand. Emily ran up to them, excited. Grandma, Grandpa, she squealed, hugging George tightly. Happy birthday, sweetheart, George said, hugging her back. Linda handed Emily the gift bag with a tight smile. Here you are, dear. Happy birthday, she said, her voice lacking warmth. Emily opened the gift right away. It was a small stuffed animal, clearly not new. Oh, thank you, Grandma. Emily tried to hide her disappointment. I caught Tom's eye, and he frowned slightly. We both saw the letdown on Emily's face. I was about to say something when Carly, my friend, who'd overheard some guests talking, pulled me aside. Jess, did you hear about Linda's gift to Jack last week? A whole space-themed party with a professional telescope and all. And Emily gets that? Carly nodded towards the stuffed animal. I clenched my fists, feeling my face heat up. I can't believe this. Every time, Carly. It's like she does it on purpose. The party continued with lots of guests and relatives mingling and enjoying the day. Suddenly, I noticed Emily wasn't around. I found her crying in one of the rooms. "Sweetie, what happened?" I asked, kneeling beside her. "Mommy, Cousin Jack said I'm a second-class person and I need to wash up before I can play with him," she sobbed, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I felt a surge of anger. "He said what?" I stood up, stormed into the living room, and pulled Tom aside. "Tom, Jack is bullying Emily. He just told her she's second class." Tom's face turned red with anger. "What? I'll sort this out." He immediately went to find his brother, Mike. Mike was taken aback. "I don't understand, Tom. Jack's just a kid. Where'd he get that idea?" Nearby, Jack, unaware of the grown-up tensions, casually mentioned, "Grandma said not to play with Emily. She told me." Silence fell over the room. Everyone turned to look at Linda, who was visibly embarrassed. "This is unacceptable, Linda. You need to apologize," one of the guests said out loud. Others murmured in agreement. Linda, cornered and flustered, muttered a reluctant apology and, looking at Emily, added, "I'm sorry, dear. How about we spend some time next week, just you and me?" Despite my doubts, I agreed. Maybe this was a chance for Linda to right her wrongs. I nodded, hoping for the best. "Okay, Linda. Let's try that." After the birthday party fiasco, things were tense at home. Tom and I knew we couldn't let it slide. It was more than just about a gift, it was about how Linda's attitude was affecting our daughter. We needed to have a real, no-holds-barred conversation with her. The following week, we decided to meet with Linda at her house. On the drive over, Tom seemed nervous, gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. "You okay?" I asked, touching his arm gently. "Yeah, just not looking forward to this talk. But it's got to be done, for Emily," he replied, his voice steady but strained. We arrived and found Linda in her garden, pruning some bushes. She looked up, wiping sweat from her brow with a dirty glove. "Tom, Jess, what brings you here? Something wrong?" Linda's voice was cautious, a hint of defensiveness already lacing her tone. "We need to talk, Mom. About what happened at Emily's party," Tom said, getting straight to the point. Linda sighed, setting down her gardening shears. "I thought this might be coming. Let's go inside." Once in the living room, I decided to kick things off. "Linda, what Jack said at the party, and your behavior, it's hurting Emily. She feels less loved, and that's not okay." Linda crossed her arms, her back straightening. "I already apologized for that. Jack's words were unfortunate, but kids say things without meaning them. It's more than just Jack, Linda. It's about how you treat her differently from her cousin. It sends a message, not just to the kids but to everyone," I pressed, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. Linda looked away, then back at us. "I do the best I can. I've always favored boys, it's just how I was raised. But I love all my grandchildren." "But your actions don't show that, Linda." "Actions speak louder than words," Tom interjected, his tone more forceful than I'd heard in a long time. There was a pause, heavy with tension, before Linda finally spoke, her voice softer, almost vulnerable. "Maybe I've been wrong. It's hard for me to admit, but perhaps I haven't been fair to Emily." Tom and I exchanged a quick glance, surprised by her admission. "I don't know how to fix this overnight, but I'm willing to try. For Emily," Linda continued, her eyes meeting mine, then Tom's. "We appreciate that, Linda. Maybe start by spending some quality time with Emily. Just the two of you," I suggested, hoping to bridge the gap. Linda nodded. "I'd like that. I'll call and set something up. A day at the zoo, perhaps? She likes animals, doesn't she?" "She does," I smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Linda had promised to spend the whole day with Emily, just the two of them, which I thought was a great step towards mending their relationship. So, you can imagine my surprise when I saw her grandson, Jack, climbing into the car with them. "Linda, I thought today was about you and Emily spending time together," I said, a bit confused as we stood by her car. "I know, Jess, but I thought it would be good for them to have some time together too, to reconcile and fix things from the birthday party," Linda replied, sounding like she had the best intentions. Although hesitant, I didn't want to argue in front of the kids. "Alright, just make sure Emily has a good time too," I said, and gave Emily a little hug and a kiss. "You've got your phone, sweetie. Call me if you need anything, okay?" "I will, Mommy," Emily said, a bit uncertain but trying to be brave as she climbed into the car. I watched them drive off, feeling a mix of emotions but hoping for the best. Several hours later, my phone rang. It was Emily, and she was crying. "Mommy, I'm so cold and I'm scared," she sobbed into the phone, her voice quivering. "Baby, where are you? Why are you cold? It's warm outside," I said, my heart starting to race with worry. "I'm at the ice rink, Mommy. Grandma went somewhere with Jack. I don't know where they are," she cried, and my worry turned into anger. "The ice rink? Emily, why are you at an ice rink? Did Grandma not tell you where she was going?" "She said we were going for a walk, and then we came here. I didn't bring my jacket, Mommy. It's so cold," she continued, her voice shaking. "Okay, sweetheart, find someone who works there, maybe at the desk or a coach, and give them the phone," I instructed, trying to keep my voice calm for her sake. A few minutes later, a man came on the line. "Hello, I'm the skating instructor here. Your daughter was left unsupervised. We're keeping her safe and warm here with us." "Thank you. I'm on my way, I'll be there as fast as I can," I replied, my voice firm but my mind reeling with frustration and anger. As I drove to the rink, my thoughts were a whirlwind. Why would Linda think it was okay to leave Emily at an ice rink alone? And where had she gone with Jack that was so important? When I reached the skating rink, Emily was safe, thankfully, but the scene was a mess. The rink staff had already called the police and the custody service due to the nature of the situation. My heart was pounding as I explained everything to the officers, detailing how Linda had irresponsibly left Emily alone and in an inappropriate environment. The grandma brought them here, skated for a bit, and then just took off with the boy when he fell, the skating instructor told the police, shaking his head. The little girl was shivering in her t-shirt and shorts. I was furious, listening to him. "She's just a child, how could someone think she'd be okay alone in such a place?" I said, my voice cracking with emotion as I gave my statement. The police took everything seriously. They confirmed with the mall security that Linda had been there with the kids for about an hour before rushing off, leaving Emily behind. The more they learned, the angrier I felt. I called Linda right there, needing answers. "Linda, what were you thinking? Emily could have been seriously hurt. Jack was hurt, he needed me. Emily was fine when I left," Linda responded, her tone dismissive as if it was a minor oversight. "Fine? You left her alone, Linda." She was freezing and terrified. I snapped back, hardly believing her lack of concern. After hanging up with Linda, I called Tom to tell him everything. He was livid, beyond upset. "This is unforgivable, Jess. I'm going to make sure this gets handled properly," he said, his voice firm and resolute. The fallout was immediate and severe. The police conducted a thorough investigation, and Linda was fined heavily. Due to the circumstances, she was also barred from any unsupervised visits with Emily. When Tom's brother, Mike, heard about what had happened, he and his wife were appalled and pulled back from Linda, condemning her actions outright. Tom's dad, George, also got involved, upset about the entire situation. "I'm sorry, Tom. I should have stepped in sooner. I followed her lead for too long," he confessed one evening over the phone. He even mentioned that this strain had pushed him to consider a divorce, unable to align with Linda's actions and attitudes any longer. It seemed the whole family dynamic was unraveling because of this incident. Through all this, my resolve only strengthened. Watching how everything unfolded made it clear to me that as a parent, my first and most important job was to protect Emily. I promised myself and her that I'd always be her advocate and shield, no matter what.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.